For those of you who are new to MeshOps, or sometimes referred to as procedural operations, I want to give you a quick overview. But if you're already familiar with MeshOps, feel free to move on to the next video. Mesh operations are a way of building a model that allows you to keep the tools that you use to build that particular model active and available. In other words, think of it as embedding the actual tools into the model itself. Whereas with standard direct modeling processes, you perform a function, then drop the tool and move on to the next tool. What's done is done. And oftentimes, if you want to make changes to something you did early on in the build process, you have to undo a lot of things and rebuild. But with MeshOps, you have access at any time to any particular tool that was used in the build process in order to modify the model. Think of mesh operations as a recipe for construction that you embed in an item layer. And at any time, you can go back and add more flour or another egg to the mix. And when it's done, just bake it. So in this video, I'd like to give you a quick little demonstration on how mesh operations actually function, as well as hopefully showing you some of the advantages of using MeshOps on your models. So the first thing I'm going to do, and as you can see I have an empty scene and I have an empty layer, but I'm going to go ahead and click on this little icon here, which is going to open the MeshOps viewport. Then I'm going to add a mesh operation. I want to build a model, so I'm going to do that procedurally here and go down to where it says create, and I'm going to add a cube. Okay, so now we have the same tools as we would have if we built the tool using the standard modeling tools. And you can see, however, the properties are on the right-hand side as opposed to the left-hand side when we do it with direct modeling. So we can do the same sort of things, scale it, move it, whatever we want to do with this. In this case, I'm going to, resize this, but I'm going to select resize from center. And that's going to just squash it down like that, evenly in both top and bottom. Now I'm going to go ahead and add some segments. I'm going to click on the gang tool there and just move my little virtual slider there. And I think that's plenty for what we're going to do here. All right, so I'm dropping that tool. And I want to go ahead and bevel some of these polygons. So I'm going to go to polygon. And yes, I can actually select the polygons on a procedural model here. And let's do that. Let's select those few, it's fine. Now I'm going to want to bevel these. So I'm going to add an operator, and I'm going to type BEV in the little top search bar there. And that's a really handy thing to use actually, because there's so many mesh operations that you can really get lost in this panel. So I'm going to select the polygon bevel, double click on that, and that adds it to this stack here, this operation stack. So now since I had those polygons selected, I can go ahead and just grab that little widget and bring that up just like you would in a direct modeling operation, and I can scale those in a little bit. How about that? All right, let's bring it down a little bit. Okay, so that's fine. Now I want to say I want to bevel the edges on this. So I'm going to add another bevel, and we'll go to edge bevel this time. Now, because I didn't select any edges, it's going to assume I want to bevel all the edges in here. So you can see that everything is beveling. So I don't want to do that, but I want to only select those outer edges. Now I can go around and just select those and add those to a selection set here within the edge bevel selection pipeline here. But I don't want to do that because that might mess up if I want to change the cube at all. So what I want to do is I want to go ahead and add a selection type, and I'm going to go down here where it says select by previous operation, and so it's going to select what I had selected in the polygon bevel. So but I have to tell it that. So under here I go polygon bevel is what I want to use for my selection, and what part of that bevel I want to use the front part of that bevel. Now if I go ahead, and maybe I need to do this so you can see the edges here. Now if I go ahead and go to my edge bevel there so I get the properties up. Go ahead and do an inset. It's going to inset, again, all of these edges here. It's going to do that. So I don't want that. So what I want to do is just the outer boundary. So what do? Add another selection type. And you guessed it, boundary edges. Click there. And now when I go ahead and use the edge bevel tool, you can see here it only bevels the outer boundary. And let's go ahead and add some roundness to that. I want to turn that back on there. Select 2 right there. Yeah, that's nice. Okay, so that's what I wanted to do. Now, the advantage of this type of selection here is that now I can go back and say, oh, maybe I wanted to bevel a few more polygons on my cube. So I can go ahead and go to the polygons here and say, I'm going to select this one, this one, this one, this one. Now I'm going to go ahead and go to the selection that I used for the polygon bevel. Select by index. And I'm just going to add those selected polygons to this selection index. And there we go. Now you can see that if I had to do this with a direct modeling process, I would have had to unbevel or repair the beveling that I did originally and select new polygons or a new group of polygons and bevel those. So yes, so this is the power of using the procedural or MeshOps.